Wow, I feel like it's been a couple of weeks since I've seen you all. So it's really good to be back, and I've been kind of out of the loop a little bit. Thanks to our elders and staff and everybody just kind of putting up with me taking a little vacation time and all that good stuff. Since we're not really launching a sermon series or a book study or anything like that for a couple of weeks, it might seem a little random because we have this week, and then next week is I Love My Church Sunday and our church picnic, which I always love that day because we just kind of look at what the church is all about and what we're trying to do and all that good stuff. And then we go to Blue Lake Park for a picnic, right? We have fried chicken and baked chicken because some of you are like, fried chicken? You're like, who would ever bake a chicken, right? Anybody like that? Like, come on, what's the difference here? So anyway, more about that here in just a few minutes, but I'm just really kind of excited because I've got this day to talk about something that's really just been on my heart and something that I think is important for us as a church, and because it reflects the heart of God is what happens. And so keep that in your mind. Everything I'm saying is really because we want to ultimately reflect the heart of God and who He is. And I believe that in our church, one of the greatest areas that we can always continue to improve and always grow in is the way we express our worship, our devotion, and our love for God. This was an important topic for Jesus. If you remember a long time ago when we were working through the Gospel of John, you get to John chapter 4, verse 23. Listen to what Jesus says. It's pretty fascinating. He says this, "But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship Him." Did you get this? So first of all, Jesus starts talking about what? True worshipers. And that's really the title of our message today, true worshipers. If there are true worshipers, then there must also be false worshipers, right? And so that's why Jesus is kind of needing to bring a difference between the two. If there's true worshipers, then there must be false worshipers. And what is God seeking? God is seeking true worshipers. Did you catch that? God is seeking. He's looking for true worshipers. God's not looking for great public speakers, for great preachers, for charismatic leaders, for those who are gifted in administration, the best looking, the best style, the most wealthy, or the one who has the most Instagram followers, all right? That's not what God is looking for. What God is looking for is what? Who? True worshipers. That's what God is seeking. God, the Father, the creator of the universe, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the creator of you and me, is seeking true worshipers. And so what happens is we come to church and we're like, but you know what? Worship's not really for me. It's just not really my thing. Well, I'm just not very good at it. I believe in everything, but I'm just not good at this worship thing. And I would actually push back and I would say this. We are actually great worshipers. Great worshipers. If you love college football, you worshiped a little bit yesterday. You did. It just naturally happens, right? Think about all the different ways we worship. We worship in dozens and dozens of different ways. Mark, why don't you go ahead and show some pictures of just random people doing their worship thing, right? Because worship may not be some people's thing, but there is worship comes when we're showing something value, when we're showing that there is something that is worth something to us. And all of a sudden, worship happens, right? You think about it. You watch like sporting events, people worship in really weird ways. If you're a Green Bay Packers fan, you wear a block of cheese on your head. For real. People paint their bodies, right? They strip down to their skivvies and they paint their bodies in their team colors. That's worship. You think about it, you go to a great restaurant and you talk about how you rave about how wonderful the food is and how it's the best food you've ever had. And we worship because it was so good. We attend a concert and we love the people who are attending the concert with, and we dance and we sing along with the songs and then we worship, right? We celebrate. If we won the lottery, do you think we'd just be like, I won the lottery? Right? And so these pictures, they reveal really good worship. And as a culture, actually, we know how to worship, and we know how to worship really, really, really good. The problem is we worship really bad gods. Did you catch that? We know what good worship is. We know how to worship. The problem is we worship really bad gods. And it's interesting because the challenge is the opposite happens in the church. We have a really good God to worship. And sometimes we worship really, really bad. You catch what I'm saying? We know how to worship. But something happens. Something happens. Even today, we've set this time aside where we're singing and we're worshiping God. And I just want to ask, did you experience the presence of God? Did you worship God? Did you thank Him for who He is and for what He's done to express the deepest part of our heart and the deepest amount of love that we have for Him? Or did we show up just a little bit late and did we just watch the band sing and play some instruments? See, Jesus talked about this problem. He was pointing it out to the Pharisees. This is what He said in Matthew 15. This people, they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far. Their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me. See, I don't want to be a church that is summarized by that verse. What I want to do is I want to challenge us with just 3 qualities of worshipers, of true worshipers. I mean, since God is seeking true worshipers, should we not know what true worship is then? And what the qualities of a true worshiper are? I think it's so important for us to understand. And notice, I'm not talking about genres and style and preference of music and all of these type of things. As a matter of fact, I am so thankful for my first church experience where we had an organ and a piano, all right? And we sang a lot of hymns and a lot of choruses, all right, because we didn't sing other music because it wasn't quite acceptable yet, and we're talking the late 90s. And then I remember being a part of my home church in Miami, Oklahoma, and we moved buildings, and they moved the organ because that's what you do, and you moved the piano because that's what you do, and they added drums and a guitar to it. Now that was interesting worship, organ, piano, drums, guitar. Wow. With one guy standing up front doing this. Okay? I mean, borderline a cantor, right? You know what I mean? Just kind of leading us in music. And so I actually learned how to count. If we sang hymns here, I could actually feel good about flying away, right? And so literally, I appreciate my experience. And then if you were to listen to my iPod, seriously, you'd be so confused. I've got a little bit of Mozart and a little bit of Bach and a little bit of, well, everything. I even have a couple of country songs, which, by the way, total tangent here. 82% of East County people claim to listen to country music on a regular basis in their car. And I'm thinking, God did send me to a mission field. I'm serious. Between the amount of people who have cats and listen to country music, I have a lot of work to do. All right, that was just a little random something. But seriously, I feel so incredibly blessed in just my church experience and my history that I've been able to find a way to worship God regardless of what's being sung, what's being played. That I can find ways to express my worship to God for who He is and for what He's done because He deserves it. Because I want to be a true worshiper who loves Him and wants to express honor and glory to His name. And so I want to challenge all of us to be that way. Here's the first quality of a true worshiper, and it's this. We worship with awe. Awe. I love this verse. Listen to this. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 28 and 29. It says, therefore, let us be grateful to receive a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Hear this, okay? I want you to hear this. Regardless of your past, regardless of your future, regardless if you are a Jesus follower and you are pursuing Him and striving to become more and more and more like Jesus, then we have inherited a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Now that's not something just to be like, No, listen. It's something that can't be taken. It's something that can't be destroyed. It means that everything around you can fall apart, but you will have a foundation that is unshakable. That it is unbreakable, and it is firm, and it is solid. That's what this verse is saying. And so therefore, let us offer to God acceptable worship. Why? Because He's given us this foundation and this rock to stand on that can't be shaken, that can't be destroyed, with reverence and awe. Why? Because God is an all-consuming fire. Now that verse should light us up a little bit. It should make us excited. It should make us want to worship because we recognize who God is and what God has done. And because no matter of what our past is and no matter what our future holds, what Jesus died and rose from the dead to give us cannot be shaken, cannot be taken, it cannot be destroyed. And therefore, God is worthy of our worship. Yeah. Wow. You guys are fun. Here's the problem. Awe is a diluted word. Awe is a diluted. The Oklahoma Sooners, they were awesome yesterday. I'm really excited about them, but clearly you are not. But I had these awesome tacos on vacation that were some of the best tacos I've ever had. Do you see what we do? Everything's awesome. Our kids are awesome, our schools are awesome, our houses are awesome, our family's awesome, our wives are awesome, everything's awesome, right? And so what happens is everything gets diluted, and then God, guess what? He's awesome too. Just awesome. But listen to this. The word awesome, the word awe that we're talking about comes from a Greek word called phobos. All right? Guess what word is derived from the word phobos? Phobia. Well, hold on. You mean I'm supposed to have a phobia to God? Now get this. No, that's what it means. It's this reverential fear for the power and the holiness of God. What it means is that ultimately and concretely, God is the only one who is awesome, period. And so therefore, our worship should be awe. Awe. Psalm 95 verse 6 says, "O come, let us worship, and let us bow down, and let us kneel before the Lord our Maker." See, as followers of Jesus, this kneeling position, our bowing position, it should be very common. It should be a regular practice. Lowering ourselves so that God can be elevated is so important. He doesn't need to be elevated, does He? No, because He's God. And so when the wise men, they come and kneel and bow before Jesus, what's happening? They're actually putting themselves in the posture and in the position for God to be elevated in their individual lives. When Simon Peter bows before Jesus and he kneels before Jesus, what's happening? He's putting himself in a position where God can become more in his life and he can become less. That's what this practice of bowing and kneeling is. And so, by the way, if you're thinking, it's just not for me, you should read the book of Revelation. Because I'm telling you, there is a day that is coming where there is a trumpet that is going to blow, and the verses tell us that every knee will and every tongue will confess that He is Jesus. And so when we kneel and when we bow, hey, you guys woke up a little bit. It's only 11:24. Man. Right? And so this is what we're talking about. Maybe this week, seriously. Bowing and kneeling isn't something that we practice together in corporate worship at Mountain View. It's just not something, nobody is going to look at you weird if you do it, right? Because we understand that it's an act of worship. But maybe this week, it's been a long time since you've kneeled or you've bowed in the presence of God. Maybe you've never done it. And I just want to challenge you, maybe this week, sometime, could you find a time, just you and God, and could you kneel and bow and understand what it means to become less so that He can become more in our lives? That's what this act is. That's what the practice is. Maybe where nobody can see, you can do it so God could be elevated in your life again. So number one is we worship in awe. Number two is we worship with abandon. Remember our study in David, the Ark of the Covenant is coming to arrive in the city of King David. And King David, he led the way worshiping. How did he do it? He did it with total abandonment, right? Listen to this, 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 14. David danced before the Lord with all of his might. And David was wearing a linen ephod. Basically, he was in his undies. All right? And he was dancing before the Lord. Now, let me caution you, okay, that if on a Sunday morning you're thinking, I'm just going to go to church today in my undies and I'm going to worship the Lord by dancing, we do have a security team. And so you need to take that thought captive and replace it with truth. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Do you like how I did that? Like a little summary and then... But seriously, it's not something we practice. So leave home with clothes. All right? Is that fair? Kill. Yeah, good. So anyway, David gave it all, and he didn't care what anybody thought. That's the key here, because he was worshiping God. That's what he was doing. And so don't get confused, because we're really not talking about dancing. What we're talking about is an attitude, a heart attitude about worship, where we don't let things hold us back. Now, we strive for unity, so there's certain things that we do or don't do in our worship gatherings because we all come from different backgrounds, all different places, and so we strive to do some things. But here's the reality. When you've experienced Jesus and you've experienced life change, there may be some things that we do that look silly to other people. When you've encountered Jesus through life change, we might clap our hands and sing. We might do a little two-step, not too big a one, but a little one, right? You don't have to worry about that with me because I am either clapping or singing. I don't know how to do both. All right? I really don't. I've tried, and I'm jealous of every one of you who can do that. And so the deal is this, that it means that I can clap, it sings, even though I can't. It means that I might do some things. And so David, he's dancing, he's worshiping God in his underwear, and his wife is like, what is he doing? And she kind of ridicules him just a little bit. Listen to his response to her in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 21. And David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me as prince over Israel, the people of the Lord. And I will celebrate before the Lord. I will make myself yet more contemptible than this, and I will be abased in your eyes." Basically what David's saying, let me summarize it for you, is, honey, you haven't seen anything yet. You have not seen a thing yet because of who God is and because of what God's done. I can't help but praise Him. I can't help it. And the problem is, I told you this, our church buildings, they're all wrong. Think about it. When you walk into the church auditorium or the church sanctuary or the worship center, whatever you want to call it, it sends a really confusing message about who the audience is. See, we walk in the back, and the first thing we see is this big stage with bright lights, right? And it's shining, and everything that's being done is facing you all. And so it sends a really confusing message because based on this, everyone probably assumes, I'm up here for who? You. And that the worship team is up here for who? You. And so then it creates kind of this awkward interaction because really that's not what we're doing this for. That's not who we're doing this for. This is not for us. There is an audience, and it's not, and it will never be for me, and it will never be for you. Every person in this room who's following Jesus and striving to become more like Jesus is a part of this beautiful holy choir or chorus, an assembly of God's people, and God is our audience. And we can't confuse those two things. We can't forget this. It's why what we do is never as important as who we do it for. Did you hear that? What we do doesn't matter as much as who we are doing it for. And sometimes I stand in amazement to the way God changed my life. And so sometimes I sing loud. And sometimes I sing loud and it's off key. And sometimes I try to clap, and I might clap off, right? I mean, sometimes I stand still and I listen to the beautiful voices of the people around me and I think, wow. And sometimes I sit and I contemplate again over and over and over the way Jesus has changed who I am and has given me a new life and a new path and a new meaning and a new purpose, and I'm in awe of that. And I sit there and sometimes I just remain silent and I think about the ways that God has forgiven me and how I've changed. You see what I'm saying? But the purpose is this: what we do is never as important as who we do it for. And we can't forget this. So the three qualities of worship: we worship in awe, we worship with abandon, and the third one is this: we worship with intimacy. Intimacy. Psalm 27 verse 4. I love this passage. It says this. It's King David again. This is what he's saying. One thing I have asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in His temple. So this is the deal. David's saying, listen, I can ask God for anything. Literally, David's in this position, a man after God's own heart, and he can ask God for literally anything. If we were in that position where we could literally ask God for anything, what would we ask Him for? And this is what David does. David, a man after God, literally, David, he could have asked for anything he wanted, yet David asked for one thing, and that was to dwell in the house of God. He didn't ask for power. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for popularity. He didn't ask for success. What David asked for was intimacy with God. That's what David asked for, to dwell in His house, to see His glory, to have an opportunity to worship Him over and over and over again. And this is the deal. God knows us. It's sort of like being married, right? I've been married to Sarah for 13 years, 13 perfect, blissful, problem-free years. And seriously, right? Right? She's not saying yes. Tony, if you just shake her head yes and up and down for me behind there, that'd be really helpful. Okay? So here's the deal. But seriously, I love Sarah. Does that sound serious? I hope so. I really love Sarah. Okay? And I know Sarah. And if you ask me anything about Sarah, I wouldn't say, oh, hold on, let me go check with Google. If you ask me anything about Sarah, I wouldn't say, oh, hold on, let me go follow her on her Instagram so I can figure out what she stands for, or what's important to her, or what's meaningful to her. I wouldn't say, oh, hold on, let me go do some research for a minute. Why? Because I know Sarah. We've lived together for 13 years, right? I know what makes her mad. Not that I would ever push any of those buttons on purpose, but I know what makes her tick. I know what makes her mad. I know what makes her sad. I know what gets her excited. I know when she is done, because she's got that mom done face that just makes you kind of go, I've learned. Sort of, right? And so I know these things. I know about her. I know I live with her. She's a part of my life, and I'm a part of her life. And that's what God wants too. He wants to know us, and He wants us to know Him. Not know about Him, but to really know Him. And know how He thinks, and know how He's wired, and know how He is with His creation. And the only way to know Him, and not just know about Him, is to be with Him and to spend time with Him and to make Him a part of our lives. That's that intimacy. That's that part of Him that's there. And why is this so important? See, I want Mountain View to be a worshiping church. I want us to be passionate people when it comes to worship. I want us to even maybe think about arriving early and sitting in our chairs and praying to God about the things that are going to happen in this room on a Sunday morning. I want us to be so changed and so transformed by Jesus. I want us to experience His forgiveness and His grace throughout the week, and have experienced Him in our daily lives, and we see Him show up and helping us sort out different difficulties that we face throughout the week, that we come together with a bunch of other followers of Jesus who have had similar experiences throughout the week, and we just can't wait to worship God together. Because of who He is and what He's done. Why is it important to me? Because I believe authentic Jesus followers who legitimately worship God is the most powerful tool in reaching those who are far from God. And we should look different. We should be different. Our worship to God should be so visible that people are saying, what is going on? See, we don't need to be a cool church to reach lost people. We have to be authentic people who really love God and worship Him with our whole hearts, and our whole mind, and our whole soul, and our whole strength. It's when people witness others who have been transformed by the power of Jesus that is so compelling that that's how we reach people who are far from God. We worship with abandonment, we worship with awe, and we worship with intimacy because of who He is. So listen to this. Psalm 141 says this. O Lord, I call upon You. Hasten to me. Give ear to my voice when I call to You. Let my prayer be counted as incense before You, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice. You know what lifting up the hands actually means? Two things. Victory, right? Every time Oklahoma made a touchdown yesterday, my arms went up going, woohoo, victory! Right? And you Duck fans got there about the second half. It's all right. But here's the deal. Victory. Our kids finish the school year, which they're just beginning. Oh. But towards the end of the school year, their arms will be up. They'll be like, I did it! I finished it. Or when we're out setting out doing a big task, we're trying to complete a project and we get done, what's our natural, normal reaction? Yes! Finished. See, there's victory in Jesus, isn't there? My Savior forever. But also means something else. Also means surrender. It means, God, I yield my life to you. It means, God, I'm not God. You are. And God, I need to remember that I'm me. You're God. Your ways are better than my ways. I mean, it might be a good idea right now just to lean toward the person sitting next to you and say, I'm not God. And maybe remind the person sitting next to you, you're not God. Why? Because God is God. And our job is to surrender to Him. So this is what I want you to do. Christian and Andrea are here. They're going to sing a song. And I want us just to prepare our hearts for our communion time, which is really one of the most intimate times we provide for you and God in our weekend gatherings. Here's the question I want you to ask yourself right now. As they're singing this song, is there anything more worthy than Jesus that deserves my full worship? Is there anyone or anything more than Jesus that is worthy of my complete, total devotion? Would you ask yourself that question and think about it as they sing this song?
My life is yours.
My life is yours.
And my hope is in you only. And my heart you hold.
My heart you hold.
'Cause you make this sinner holy, holy, holy. Your glory is so beautiful. I fall onto my knees in awe, and the heartbeat of my life is to worship in your light. Your glory is so beautiful. Your glory is so beautiful.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. And glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus.
So every week at Mountain View, we pause to be in awe of Jesus, to kind of re-abandon our hearts and have a moment of intimacy. And we call it communion, where we pass these little pieces of bread and these little cups of juice. There's so much more that could happen. Because that bread represents literally the gift of peace and freedom and joy and hope because of what Jesus accomplished on the cross. And the cup verifies it. And man, what the cross, but Jesus raising from the dead did for us is it's unshakable. It's immovable. It's there and it's solid. And we can stand on it. And so today when you eat the bread and you drink the juice and you think of what Jesus has done in your own life, again, ask yourself this question: is there anything or anyone who is more worthy than Jesus that deserves my worship? I think if you'll search your heart, you'll find there's nothing, there's nobody as worthy of Jesus who deserves our worship. And so right now, would you just use this moment as an intimate moment between you and God to get to know each other, to thank Him for who He is and what He's done. Let me pray. God, thanks for today. Thanks for these moments where we can be reminded that you are seeking, you are looking, you are searching for true worshipers. And God, I want it to be said of all of us that you have found some. And so right now, God, we just want to be right with you. We want to align our own lives and our own hearts with you, God. We want to worship you. We want to know you. And so right now, God, we just want to thank you for who you are and what you've done. In Jesus' name.